You got the raise 3 months ago. Not a token bump, a real one. Enough that you did the math in your head on the drive home and thought, this changes things. But it is a Wednesday night now, and you are moving $40 from savings back into checking just to make sure the auto pay for your car insurance clears in the morning. The raise landed. The relief did not. The reason that keeps happening is not that you spent the money on something stupid, it is that recurring costs moved first. The slightly bigger apartment felt reasonable at the new salary. The car payment ticked up when you rolled into a newer lease. A couple of subscriptions you forgot you approved are still drafting every month, each one locked in as a fixed monthly charge, and fixed charges compound against your cash flow every single month, while the raise only happened once. That is the trap. Income jumps in a single moment, but obligations expand into every month that follows. And once they harden, the leftover feels exactly as tight as before. I am Sam from Simply Money, and I have spent way too much time analyzing why people earning more than they ever have still feel like they are barely keeping up. If you have ever looked at your paycheck and your checking balance in the same week and wondered how those two numbers could possibly coexist, subscribe, because closing that gap is exactly what this channel is for. Today I'm going to walk you through a simple decision framework built around the 3 recurring cost categories that usually explain where a raise actually goes, and the one filter that tells you whether your next dollar should go to cutting a fixed bill, building a buffer, or staying exactly where it is. Let me start with the bill that almost always does the most damage. Housing is almost always the biggest single bill, and it is the one most likely to expand the moment income does. For the average household, the cost of where you live takes about a third of total annual spending. That is not a suggestion or a budgeting target. That is what people actually spend. And for a lot of households, it is more than a third, because when the raise arrived, the apartment upgrade felt like the most reasonable reward. The problem is that rent is a recurring monthly obligation. It does not care that the raise only happened once. It drafts every single month at the new higher number, and within a few cycles, it has absorbed a chunk of the gain before savings ever saw a dollar. Transportation is the second category that quietly does the same thing. A car payment, insurance premium, fuel, and maintenance together account for roughly 17% of average consumer spending. That means housing and transportation combined can take half of a household's money before food, utilities, debt payments, or anything discretionary even enters the picture. When people try to save by cutting small daily expenses, they are often optimizing inside the remaining half, while the 2 biggest line items sit untouched. That is like trying to lower a bathtub's water level with a teaspoon while the faucet is still running. Here's what that looks like in practice. Say your raise added $400 a month to your take-home pay. The new apartment costs $180 more. The car insurance renewal came in $40 higher because of the newer vehicle. 2 automatic charges you approved during a free trial are still drafting at $12 each. That is $244 a month in new recurring costs, locked in within weeks of the raise landing. The raise brought $400. The obligations took $244. Only $156 a month actually made it to open cash flow. And if one unexpected expense shows up, even that vanishes. Over 12 months, what looked like a $4,800 annual raise turned into about $1,800 of actual breathing room, and most of that probably got absorbed by irregular costs like a medical copay or a car repair, rather than making it into savings. Now compare that with someone who got the same $400 monthly raise but made a different sequence of decisions. This person kept the same apartment, kept the same car, and before the first new paycheck even cleared, set up an automatic transfer of $200 a month into a separate savings account. The remaining $200 stayed in checking as genuine new margin. After 12 months, that person has $2,400 saved, a visible buffer that did not exist before, and still has $200 a month of real breathing room on top of it. Same raise, same starting point, completely different outcome, because the order of decisions changed which dollars became recurring obligations and which ones became durable savings. This is not just a math problem, it is a sequencing problem, and it has a name. Call it fixed cost absorption. When income rises, recurring obligations expand to fill the new level, before discretionary savings can establish itself. The raise does not disappear. Because of one bad decision, it disappears because 5 or 6 reasonable-looking decisions each took a small recurring slice, and recurring slices stack. Now here's the part that changes how most people read this. You might be thinking, this is another lecture about spending too much on lattes and takeout, but the evidence points somewhere else entirely. More than half of Americans say higher prices are directly crushing their ability to save for emergencies. That is not lifestyle creep. That is the cost of groceries, insurance, and utilities climbing faster than paychecks. So for a lot of people, the problem is not that they upgraded recklessly after a raise. It is that their existing bills got more expensive on their own, and the raise barely covered the increase. When you add voluntary upgrades on top of involuntary price hikes, the absorption happens even faster, and the thin buffer numbers confirm this is widespread. Only about 63% of adults say they could cover a $400 emergency from cash or something close to it. That means more than a third of the country does not have enough liquid cash to handle a single moderate surprise. Barely more than half say they have set aside enough to cover 3 months of expenses. So we are not talking about people who are financially reckless. We are talking about people who are earning, spending on obligations that feel necessary, and arriving at the end of the month with almost nothing left because the structure of their cash flow does not leave room. This is also where the income illusion gets sharper. A bigger paycheck does help, but people higher on the income ladder tend to save a bigger share of each extra dollar, not just a bigger total. That means income growth alone does not guarantee savings will grow in the same proportion. If your fixed costs rise in step with your income, you end up on a treadmill where the scenery looks nicer, but the distance to safety is the same. The top fifth of earners hold about 74% of all retirement account savings, which tells you that savings concentration is not just about earning more. It is about what share of each dollar actually makes it past the recurring obligations. And sometimes the debt picture is worse than one person's file shows because about 22% of people with linked credit records live in a household where at least one member is carrying student debt, even if that debt does not appear under their own name. Some of those obligations are charges you actively chose, but some of them are charges you forgot about entirely. The Federal Consumer Finance Watchdog has flagged that recurring charges often persist, simply because they are automated and nobody remembers to cancel them. And about 1 in 4 people who save every month say they do not actually know how much they are saving. That combination is the mechanism at its most invisible. Money is leaving. Money is theoretically being saved, and nobody has a clear view of the net result. So here is the decision filter. Before your next raise, or even right now, list every recurring charge that drafts from your accounts in a month. Not a full budget, just the charges that repeat automatically. Rent or mortgage, car payment, insurance, subscriptions, memberships, loan payments, utilities on auto pay. Total those up and compare that number to your monthly take-home pay. The gap between those two numbers is your actual margin for saving, emergencies, and everything else. If the gap is small, no amount of cutting minor daily spending will fix the problem, because the structure is absorbing the income before you get a chance to allocate it. If you are someone whose fixed costs already eat most of the paycheck, the highest leverage move is usually renegotiating or downsizing one of the top 2 categories, housing or transportation, not trimming 10 small things. If your fixed costs leave reasonable margin but savings still are not growing, check for forgotten automatic charges and measure whether you actually know how much is being saved each month. And if you're about to get a raise or a new job with higher pay, the single most valuable thing you can do is route a specific dollar amount to savings before any recurring cost has a chance to expand to absorb it. The mechanism is simple. Income arrives once. Obligations recur forever. The cost hurting you most is almost never something you bought this week. It is something you agreed to months or years ago that is still drafting every 30 days. And the raise does not fix that unless you catch the gap before it closes. You are not bad with money because your account is tight on a Wednesday night. You are living inside a system where recurring costs expand to match income unless you intercept the next dollar before it becomes someone else's monthly revenue. In the next video, I want to walk through how to actually build that recurring cost map in about 10 minutes so you can see exactly where the absorption happened and which single line item would free up the most room.